because President Biden's campaign is also facing some questions about support within his own party, and Andy Levin joins us. Mr. Levin, a former Democratic congressman from the state of Michigan, distinguished fellow at the Center for American Progress. So, again, it's kind of a similar conversation, obviously, in a different, different topics around it. But you and I spoke after Michigan, the uncommitted vote, these young voters angry about the president's policies and the way he's handling the war in Gaza, made their voices heard. It was like 13%. But then, last night, places like Minnesota, we saw even more. It was almost 20%. And I think we have a screen we can put up, at least raw numbers of where we're seeing this protest vote in a lot of states. So what about the president and the problems in his own party and whether or not he can win re-election with those issues? What do you say?
Well, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that the president does win re-election. But this is really something, I don't think I've seen, Connell. Basically, there's a movement to push a sitting president to stop large-scale killing of innocent civilians. And it's really got its own momentum, its own traction. It was really a grassroots movement here in Michigan. Look what happened in Minnesota. They only had a week, and they got almost, as you said, 20% of the vote. They're going to send a number of delegates. I've heard 8 to 10 possibly delegates to the convention in Chicago from Minnesota. And the uncommitted, the version of uncommitted there won outright in a number of areas, especially in the core Minneapolis.
Right. But wait, did you start by saying you're going to work to make sure the president does win re-election, even with all of that? That's how you view it?
That's what I've said that all along.
Right. So how does that work?
Well, here's the thing, Connell. My feeling, my analysis about Michigan is that I don't feel like the president can win re-election unless he changes course on Gaza. We need a permanent ceasefire. We need to end to the carnage, and an end to the destruction, an end to settler violence on the West Bank. And then we need a huge diplomatic initiative that this president is perfectly situated to lead,
right,
to at long last achieve a just peace for, so that my people, the Jewish people, can have a homeland there, and that the Palestinian people can also have full self-determination and human rights.
No, I had another Democrat on last hour who's still in the Congress. You may know Congressman Landsman's, I think would be described as more moderate Democrat in the state of Ohio. And I asked him kind of similar questions, and then he made this last point about how he thinks it all shakes out at the end when it comes to November. Let's listen to what he had to say and then see how you maybe differ. This was last hour.
The biggest issues when we get to October, November are going to be the same issues that played a huge role in the 2022 elections: democracy, freedom, and fixing this broken economy. And people do care deeply about protecting this democracy. They're not going to let go of the fact that Trump tried to overturn a presidential election, that he and others are stripping away our freedoms.
So his point, Congressman Levin, seems to be like, at the end of the day, even though people seem like they're angry now, people, young voters, people like you are angry now about the war, they'll come back because these other issues, January 6th and other things, are more important than they'll be for Biden.
So I didn't overlap with Congressman Landsman. I think he's a freshman.
Yeah.
But I agree with what he said there. But here's the thing, Connell. It's sort of like you're playing blackjack and you're just sure that last card is going to fall your way. Dude, that's not how I play politics. I don't think it makes any sense to just count on people to come back. I think the congressman is missing how much of 1968 there is in 2024 in terms of capital D Democratic politics within the Democratic Party. We have, look at Minnesota. It's not nearly as Arab American a state as Michigan at all, right? There are other kind of immigrant groups there, other kind of Muslims, a lot of young people, and yet they carried this on so strongly.
But Biden will still win Minnesota, right? I mean, if he doesn't win there,
I assume Biden will win Minnesota, but the Electoral College arithmetic requires him to win Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And we just can't afford to have a lot of people. I don't think folks are going to vote for this horrifying Donald Trump, who, wanted to really actively tried to overturn our democracy. I mean, what if they stay home?
That's
Connell?
the thing. You're worried about the couch. That's how people say, rather than losing in a binary choice, that people don't come out. All right, we'll see. Maybe there's something in the State of the Union. That's tomorrow night. I'm sure you'll be. Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.